Hey, it's Sam of What Yacht To Do, and welcome to the bridge of the Here's To Us. We are on trip 188 going over to Polestar Marina in St. Charles from Grafton. It's a really short trip, and this is a scheduled maintenance trip because you may remember trip 57. If you don't, go look it up and take a look at it. We had a problem. We had to have the boat hauled out to have a bow thruster repaired, and when we had it hauled out we found a lot of other issues, and we put it in the capable hands of what I call now Uncharted Services, Carl and the gang, and Pete of Polestar Marina. They did such a great job that we scheduled a stop on our second loop, and we scheduled that stop about 5 months out. So we're going to take you around the boat and show you what Carl and the gang did and show you some of the things that we had fixed. So one of the first things that we had done is our windlass needed servicing, and you'll want to check your manufacturer's data on when that needs servicing. It was starting to leak oil, and the windlass motor is what was starting to leak oil. So in order to have that fixed, we had to have all the chain rolled out. So we took the opportunity to remark our chain. The other thing that I wasn't happy with on the boat was that chain was bolted to the boat. So what we did was we took a shorter length of chain, bolted that to the boat, and then where it drops down there, in case I'd ever have to let that chain go, we got the anchor caught or whatever, is I put an anchor shackle on it so I can get to it from the anchor locker real quick. Some people say you're going to use a bolt cutter. That's not going to work, and a lot of other people go ahead and put rope on there from the chain to the rope to the boat. That's an idea as well. So that got fixed, and we're so happy about that because we're starting to use the anchor a lot more. So one of the next things we had done was kind of minor, but it was an irritant, was our windshield wipers were starting to wear. So this is a refill of them. So we had Uncharted Services go ahead and take care of all three of our windshield wipers, because one of the great things about the Here's To Us is it's all enclosed in glass up here, and I could run even when it's raining, although we try not to do it. Rainstorms are going to pop up, and it's really nice to have those windshield wipers, so they're working just great now. Another nuisance item was one of our depth sounders. The head on it, the LED was kind of burning out here and there, and sometimes I could tell what the depth was because I have my primary over here on my Garmin, but it was a nuisance. So we had them put a new depth sounder head in, a Lowrance 500 they replaced it with, and that's working just great now as well. So another thing that I had shipped was 2 air conditioner pumps, and that's because the Here's To Us has 5 air conditioners. There's 2 air conditioner heating systems up here, one in the Lido deck and one in the bridge, and then there's 3 downstairs. The 2 up here are carried by 1 pump, and then there's another pump that takes care of the forward VIP, the salon, and the master stateroom. It was time to have those pumps replaced, and I know Rev likes air conditioning, so I don't want it to go out. So what I did is I kept the better of the 2 that were replaced as a spare. So here is the compartment in the master stateroom where the pumps were replaced, and you can see one of them takes care of the 3 for downstairs, and one takes care of the 2 for upstairs. So as a result, both pumps replaced. It's working just fine, and we're keeping cool when we need to be cool and warm when we need to be warm. Now another item that I had shipped to have a spare part on board was a raw water pump for our diesel engines. We have a Cummins 8.3 liter diesel engines, 2 of them on the boat, so 1 spare pump ought to do it, because obviously you probably won't have both of them go out at the same time. The diesel engines really need to be cooled, and you saw in one of our videos where we actually lost a hose split, and this raw water pump wouldn't pick up any of the water to propel it through the engine to cool the engine. So that's why I wanted to have a raw water pump spare on board. So one of the things I had Carl and the gang take care of there at Uncharted Services in St. Charles, Missouri, was going in and replacing the impellers in both of the raw water pumps. And the impeller is this one here. It's a worn impeller, but I'm showing you so you know what it looks like. But inside of that raw water pump are cams and wear plates, and so they took a look at them and they said, some of these need to be rebuilt. So they did. They rebuilt them. They put new impellers in and new wear plates on it, so it works just great. It is really one of the things that I am most concerned about as I sit up there at the bridge driving the Here's to Us is, what's the water temperature? What's the oil pressure? And in this case, what's the water temperature? It will heat up real rapidly if an impeller goes out, or in the case that we had, a hose split and there's no water going through the engine. Now the Here's to Us has a oil change system for both engines and the generator. What it does not do is change the oil in the transmissions. And I was able to change the oil because of the access for it, the oil in the filter on the transmission on the port side engine, but the starboard engine was giving me problems. So I had Carl and the gang take care of that, and they changed the oil. They took the old oil out, put new oil in, and put a new filter on for me. So that's working great now as well. Somewhere around Chicago, my synchronizer stopped working. And for those of you who are always kind of asking me questions about the synchronizer, is you'll normally see in this position here is this throttle will be all the way up, and that's because I've engaged the synchronizer. Okay, so the process for engaging the synchronizer is to turn the synchronizer on and push this throttle all the way up, and then this throttle will match it. Well, right now the synchronizer is broken, and that's because of a cable that was worn. It was probably the original synchronizer cable that was worn. So let's take a look at that. So in order for that synchronizer to work, there is a cable. This is the old cable, and it went from the port engine all the way up on the ceiling of the engine room, and it went to the Glendinning synchronizer. And what you could see is over the years this thing wore out. You know, it's just a spinning cable inside of this black casing that turns and turns, and it matches the RPM. So these are the clips that hold it to the ceiling, and what I had to do was take this out and actually measure it, because they custom build a cable to the right length for you. And so now I can go down into the engine room, hook up this cable, and they said, hey, this is the synchronizer end, and hey, this is the other end. This goes to the port engine. We'll put that in, remount it in there, and then we'll go ahead and test the synchronizer. It should work again. And it really is kind of nice because it will match the RPMs on the engines really nicely, so you don't have to worry about matching the throttles up, because if you get them out of sync about 10 to 15 RPM, you can start to hear a wah, wah. So we'll keep them matched up. Now there's always things that, well, you know, have to be taken care of, but when Carl and the gang came on board that first morning and I went through the whole list with them, they recommended we pull the turbos and have those reconditioned and serviced, and so we did. And really, they needed to be done. They were starting to leak, and they got them over to the shop. Somebody else rebuilt them, and then we got them put back on. But in the process of getting them put back on, we found out that the bolts also needed to be replaced, and that was a parts availability problem and a very expensive part. One bolt, $160. And I thought they would throw in the washer and the nut for it, but no, those are a little bit extra too. So a very expensive deal, but the turbos need to be cared for, and we took care of that. Now, those of you who are out there on your boats, sometimes you can't connect to the shore power. You will blow a breaker, or it just won't connect, or whatever. And it's kind of frustrating because the rules are changing at the marinas. They're upgrading their equipment. It's a little bit more sensitive. And we had an issue every once in a while in the Here's to Us, and we started to, well, troubleshoot it. Well, we went to the AC breaker panel, pulled that off, and we found a couple loose wires in there. We took care of that. The main culprit was this, the shore power plug. And you can see this one was pretty much corroded, And so what we did is we had Uncharted Service take this off, put a brand new plug on the shore power, and boy, it works like a charm. And they said yes, when they got into this thing, it was corroded. So that's something you want to take care of. Here's to us is about 22 years old. This thing did its service, I guess, for 22 years, but now we have a brand new one on the end, and that's taking care of our issue. Our Here's to Us is equipped with a Freedom Lift, and the Freedom Lift is electrically actuated, hydraulically operated mechanism that I can just go ahead and lower this. You can see how it is. You can get in. What we do is lower this in to where it's in the water. Obviously we would take off the cover, get in, and when we come back we have a remote control, and that stows the tender. The problem that we had with the tender lift, the Freedom Lift, is that we didn't use it that much. And when you don't use things, stuff happens. Couple that with really what we considered an improper original installation, and we had some problems. So we had to have, number one was, we thought it was just an electrical issue with the solenoid. We ordered a solenoid, got that replaced, didn't work. And so what we found out was that the motor was also corroded, and so we got a new motor, and now the tender lift works just great. But let's take a look at the guts of it, which is in the lazarette here, and we'll see how it was fixed. So what you see here is in the lazarette, you can see the mechanism for the Freedom Lift. It's got the motor on there, and it's got the solenoid on there, which were replaced. But in the original installation, this complete unit was way down on the floor in there, and as a result, there is moisture that does get in there, and it corroded it. And in addition to our not using it, that's what happened. So a friend, I consider a friend, Vince came over, helped me troubleshoot it, and he built me a stand that is now bolted on there, and we raised this up so that we can kind of keep it up higher and drier. And also I'm able to take a look at it once in a while and make sure things are not getting corroded and inspect it. So hats off to the folks who helped me do this. In addition to Vince, I had my buddy Brian, who took a drive over to get that solenoid from a marina where I had it shipped to, and we got her working. So what was a planned 11-day stay there at Polestar Marina with Uncharted Services to get things fixed turned out to be 29 days. And it was because of parts availability and all kinds of things that happened during that stay. But we are glad to be back on the road again, or back on the river again. We got a great weather window that's coming up, and we're going to make our way down the mighty Mississippi. A shout out again to friend Vince, who helped reconstruct the Freedom Lift installation in there. Also to Brian and Amy, who had us over for a great steak dinner. And also future loopers, Jimmy and Reagan, who loaned us a car for a couple days while we were there so we could get provisioned when we got back to take the Here's to Us southbound. See you next time on What Yacht To Do.